Round one, fight.
And that's the bottom line.
And his kick is good.
I need a weapon.
This is over.
You cannot escape.
You forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them?
Here we go.
It's time for the main event.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Single Player Experience Podcast, the premier podcast for single player gamers to find about good single player games to play and to hear about dope stories in video games. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian, and joining me today is another special guest. You've heard her voice before. She's been on the show in previous episodes, specifically one previous episode, where we talked about the single player experience remake. Well, we're back again, and this time she's once again going to put me on the hot seat. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is my wife, none other than Giselle Malden.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, how you doing?
I am doing pretty good.
All right, so everyone, I'm putting myself back on the hot seat, and this time I'm going to let my wife ask me spicier questions about my spending habits in video games. We're going to get to the bottom if I'm an overspender or underspender, if I completely trash our budget with this expensive habit of mine, or, am I keeping this under control? So, yeah, that is going to be our topic of choice. Before we begin, though, I want to talk about one game that I've been playing lately, and that specifically is V Rising. V Rising is a game where I cannot seem to not want to play this game. It's like it's festering in my head, and I'm like constantly keep wanting to dive back into it. I think I told my wife, I'm like, oh, I'm about to go into the office for a bit and, try to get something done. And sometimes I do get something done. Other times I'm like, I slip back into that V Rising play in like another V Rising playthrough. And for those of you who don't know, V Rising is a vampire game where you're playing as this fledgling random vampire, and you're in a medieval style world where you are basically having to craft like your castle and craft like items, craft some different building mechanics. You have to build up your minions and your base of minions in order to like go out and actually thrive in a Diablo style open world game. And it's really cool because like there's a day and nighttime cycle to where like in the daytime you have to stick to the shadows or you're gonna burn to a crisp. You're a vampire, they'll burn your ass up. But like at nighttime you can just run free, and because like you don't have to just stick to the shadows. Vampires are creatures of the night. So I'm like, that game is like Diablo meets almost like let me think. It's almost like Diablo meets Valheim in a way, to where like, or Diablo meets like a Fallout building system, where you have to just like craft every single thing, and then you're able to kind of like take that craft out into the world with new armor, with new like weaponry and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the most fun games I've played this year. Now, with that said, let's get to the topic of the show, and that is, spending
Whoa.
habit.
Do you think I'm just gonna let you slide on whatever you just said that when you go into the computer you're not always doing something? You're not always getting something done?
Oh, you heard that? You heard that?
I just wanted to make it known that I heard that part. Everything else I heard too, but specifically. Oh.
Me? You talking to me? No, I think the audio broke up. Oh no. All right, so yeah.
I just didn't want to pretend that I didn't hear that. I know that I need to go and be on the lookout for some vampires, apparently.
Yeah, if you see vampires on the screen, I've been blowing off some stuff I need to get done, but like, yeah, spending habits as a single player gamer. First off, I think this is a very interesting subject. It's like gaming is innately it's known as like an expensive hobby because, the consoles, the controllers, the software, when you're buying all these games and such like that, all these prices add up. I think this is an interesting thing from a single player perspective of like, how much do we spend on this hobby that we love so much? Do we spend a lot? Do we save here and there? Everyone's different. So I thought I'd give you insight on how I kind of spend my money there. So, Giselle, what is the first question you got for me
Yeah.
on the hot seat here?
So, yeah, do you feel like you spend more on gaming now as an adult than you did when you were younger, now that you're using your own dollars?
I hope my mom didn't hear this, but I feel like I spend, it's interesting. Growing up, like my mom would give me games about maybe 3 times a year, my birthday, Christmas, and then like as a reward for the end of the year. I think like sometimes she'd do it on special occasions, that sort of thing, or like good report cards that so those would be about $40 to $50 a piece, but it was only around like it'd be maybe 6 to 9 games a year. So that was me growing up. In college, though, I think in college I was spending quite a heavy amount on video games, and around that time it was like $50 to $60 per game, and I think is when we started to make that transition. And yeah, I was going to GameStop, and then later on starting to order games online, and I think I was spending probably like maybe $60 every 2 or 3 weeks. So that got ugly really quick, and then especially when you're a poor college student. So yeah, I was spending a lot then. Now as like before I got married, I still had that kind of spending habit of like I'd buy a console and then buy some games, maybe 1 or 2 games a month at that point at the $60 tier level. I think though, now that I'm married, I would say my spending habits of video games slowed down quite a bit. And I don't think it's necessarily because I've gotten better. I think it's because Game Pass has made it easier and more affordable to kind of do that. Like I still get to play a lot of games, whether or not it be like review codes that I get from different devs and publishers, or through Game Pass that has a catalog of different games to play at any given moment. I think like the combination of those two things have made me a little less of a spender in the space. Like I do still probably spend money on video games, but I probably think it's more like 2 or 3 times a year now. I would probably say. What do you think? You in the span of like me being married, do you think I've like when we first got married versus now, do you think my spending habits have changed there?
Don't know that I feel like they've changed really. I feel like you haven't really been that big of a spender, in my opinion,
I think that's right. Yeah.
throughout, unless it was like you buying the consoles. I feel like is kind of the biggest.
Oh, the consoles are the biggest.
Yeah.
Those were like $500 a piece. Like, so we got married in 2020, and then like I had the Switch before we got married. So that was I call that a non-spend, a pre-marriage spend. So we're not gonna worry about that. But since we got married, I think I've gotten 4 consoles, right? So I got the Xbox Series S and X, the Steam Deck, and the PS5.
Yeah.
When you list them all like that, that's a lot of money. When you list them all like that, that's a lot of money. So the Xbox and the PS5 were $1,000, were $1,000. The Xbox Series S I paid $80, so that's $1,080. And then the Steam Deck, I used some gift cards that I found laying around, like that, and some money and a little bit like that. I think we paid around $180 for that, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound right to you?
I have no idea.
Okay, I'm gonna go with 180. I'm gonna go with 180. So that's, and 180.
He
that's
will
not
save
too
up
bad.
those like birthday card money, that kind of
Oh,
stuff.
will I, boy? I be pinching pennies around this bad boy. So like, my mom and like some of my family members still give me like cards and such like that, and they'll give me the occasional like gift card to Amazon or like just throw in some money like that. I always just keep that money just in that card, and then when there's a big purchase coming around, I'm like, it's time to spend, baby. It's time to spend. So I'm like, I think I did that with a couple of things, but yeah, that Steam Deck I was able to get for like a steal of a deal because I just had some gift cards lying around. But yeah, consoles have definitely been probably my bigger purchase rather than the actual games themselves at this point in my life.
By the way, crunching those numbers, I just want you to know that the next time I want to buy something for Biscuit, I'm just going to remind you of those numbers again.
Biscuit gets a treat every week, y'all. He gets a treat every single week. He gets a chew treat, like something he actually like chew up and eat something every week, and then he also gets like a chew toy, like an actual like a toy, pretty much on a weekly basis at this point. So I'm like, Biscuit is living better than me at this point.
For context, I'm not a big spender as far as like myself, but I will take this dog on a date every single weekend, so it's fair enough. But
No, I think and I think this is like one of my cultural blind spots. I've never really sat down and watched SpongeBob, but I think there's that character, the crab character, who's notorious for penny pitching.
mm-hmm.
Do you remember his name?
I think his name is Mr. Krabs, right?
Okay, so Mr. Krabs. So like the two of us are both Mr. Krabs, like people in life. You know, like we are penny pitchers to the T. Except like we splurge in different things. Like she spoils our dog Biscuit, and I'm a splurger when it comes to like the occasional video game console. But ironically, it's like some of these I'm not like spending a whole lot on software at this point, you know, in the game. So I think this year, I bought maybe 2 games this year. Both of them were pretty stupidly cheap. But I don't actually, no, maybe 2 games. But then I know last year I think I bought like 4 actual paid and bought 4 games last year or something. Yeah. But yeah, it's been really good. It's been really good, like stretch of time to where I'm like, I didn't have to spend a whole lot to actually play a whole lot of premium games.
Yeah. Well, moving along, how do you feel like FOMO affects you as a gamer? Like, do you find that you buy games because you're like afraid of missing out? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, FOMO affects me as a gamer. I didn't think it did, but as I'm like growing up, I definitely can tell that I definitely can tell that I have an urge to play the hottest things out there if it fits my like if it's a single player game specifically. Like earlier this year, Helldivers came out, and it was a multiplayer game, almost about like you fighting giant bugs, basically. That game blew up and took off, but it's a multiplayer game, and I usually don't get a hankering to play those. So that was one I didn't have very much FOMO about. I did miss the moment, but I didn't have FOMO about. A couple of years ago, Elden Ring took over the world. It was one of the hottest games out there, and I, historically speaking, do not like the Elden Ring genre, like the Souls games. Those they don't speak to me personally. I hate the fact that like the way they tell stories is like you just pick up lore and you have to kind of piece together the story through mostly lore. I want traditional method. Give me cutscenes, give me like good storytelling, voice acting, the whole 9 yards. That's what I usually want in my storytelling video games. So Elden Ring, my black ass knew I wasn't gonna like Elden Ring, but the moment was too big. It was too big to ignore. Everyone and their mama was playing Elden Ring. Like everybody. Like I had people I was in chats with. They were talking about the joy and the profound stories that they were getting out of Elden Ring. I was looking at game reviews, as I do from time to time, where this game is getting a 10 out of 10s, and that moment took over in a way that I had not seen for very many games in this generation, at least. So that was a moment where I had FOMO, where I was just like, "Yeah, I'm pulling out the car and I'm buying this game." I'm like, I gotta see what all the hype is about. I gotta see if this is the game that gets me into this genre, like its predecessors didn't. like the Dark Souls and Demon Souls did not get me into. And I was like, everyone's saying this is the one. So I completely bought that game and regret it every time I look at it on my console, because I still to this day do not like Elden Ring as a game. I still
I think
don't.
another one. As anybody who's ever listened to your podcast can probably also say the same thing for you. And my mind just went blank. What was
the game? So
Yeah.
Elden Ring.
the on the Switch that you purchased?
Oh, the whole Switch in general. I regret. The whole Switch in general.
Oh, Zelda.
Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Breath of the Wild. Both
Yeah.
Zelda games that have come out and taken the world by fire. Tears of the Kingdom is, I can acknowledge those are actually good games, but I hate to play them. Like, I like games that, again, tell that traditional way of storytelling, but like Zelda Breath of the Wild is very much a copy and paste of the story of The Last Airbender, like the Avatar The Last Airbender. So I would feel like I've experienced that story before. And then on top of that, do not like the go anywhere. We have a story here, but it's like very much like surface level. I don't feel like I got to fall in love with any character, because I feel like all of them were more on the surface level side rather than like actually having complex and rich feelings that evolve over time. I didn't see that in there. And then like the gameplay itself, I'm like, felt basic. It felt like I wanted more out of like the combat and all that. And I feel like the sense of exploration and the freedom that they give you is great, but I feel like the combat with like the striking, with the basic ways of like parrying and shields right there, feels so rudimentary that I feel like it's like that it never really clicks with me. So I'm like, I regret buying my Switch, because like the only game I really vibed with during the Switch's generation, the whole life cycle, is Fire Emblem Three Houses. I fucking love that game. Damn, I want another one of those. But like every other game, I'm like, nah, bro. I could have. Mario has been Mario for 30 years. I'm like, Mario, you gonna have to save that hell for every single time. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. So I'm like, nah, man. I've been ready for something a little more mature than the Switch catalog. So I do regret my Switch, and I do regret like Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Breath of the Wild. But I got caught up in FOMO. I really did.
Are those your only video game regrets?
Elden Ring, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and I got caught up into the hype of what Anthem was going to be. Anthem was a game where they kind of allowed you. It was touted as a game that would kind of let you play as an Iron Man style game, and that one, anyone who's been a gamer in the last like 20 years knows how bad that game turned out to be at launch. And I got caught up in the hype thinking that was going to be legitimately one of the best games ever. And yeah, put a quarter in my ass. I played myself on that one. So yeah, it was bad. It was actually bad.
Would you consider them regrets though? Because then otherwise you would have probably been like afraid of that missing out. Or do you think like it warranted it in some way?
I feel like the regrets, because with Zelda, I feel like I've never played Zelda Breath of the Wild was my first Zelda game. So I'm like, that one was never going to be a actual regret, because it was like, you've never played these games. So like everyone's talking about it. This could be your introduction to fall in love with a series that people have cared for, loved, and is held in such high regard forever. So I'm like, that one felt like, okay, I don't regret that, because I tried something and didn't like it. It's just, it comes with the territory. It happens sometimes. Tears of the Kingdom, which is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, my ass should have known better. It's a direct sequel to the game you didn't like the first time. Like a direct sequel. They changed a little bit about the gameplay. They gave you an Ultra Hand and like a little bit more crafting tools and a little bit more like flexibility in the way you can craft things. But that game is still very similar. It still holds like that same structure as the first one. I saw that in the trailer, and my dumb ass still had to go out and buy it because the hype got to. Like the hype just it got to me. I'm a victim of that. So I'm like, between that game, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, and then Elden Ring. My ass should have known better with Elden Ring. Just because they made that an open world game, I felt like it was going to be different because I'm like, oh, they're doing something different than Dark Souls and Demon Souls. It's the same damn. It's very different. Don't get me wrong. Don't come at me, Elden Ring people, but it is very much the same core values or the same core foundation of you having to basically earn XP by killing a whole bunch of enemies with hard ass bosses. And then if you die, you have to hurry up and go back and reclaim your XP points off the ground because if you die again before you reclaim it, all your shit that you just earned disappears. So I'm like, those games are renowned for being hard. They're renowned for their ways of storytelling. I've never I never vibed with it before. I never connected with it before. What made my ass think I was gonna connect with Elden Ring this go around? You know, I'm like, just because it was super hyped up and I had the FOMO of missing out. So I'm like, yeah, I played myself again. I'm like, I should have known better that I wasn't going to like Elden Ring, but FOMO made me go out and purchase that game, knowing damn well I wasn't gonna like it.
Do you think that's going to change anything for you in the future?
I feel like now that I'm telling you, when I tell you, hey, I'm about to buy this game, you can tell me, is this going to be an Elden Ring or a Zelda for you? And I feel like
No, you're not going to put that on me.
I feel like those might be the only changes. Like, because if you're not there to safeguard it, I'm going to have FOMO again. I know that I am. I just know it. There are games I'm going to be naturally excited about to play by myself for my own accord. That's just going to happen. But then there's going to be those like, man, you need to play this. You are really missing out moments if you don't play this games. And I have to really just evaluate it with myself of like, do you really think that game looks interesting for you? Or do you really want to see what all the hype is about? Because I think those are two tales of the two different sides. I do think with like the new way, like the revitalization of demos and us getting to preview and demo a lot of these games now, it might help. Maybe I'll check out the demos and be like, okay, I legitimately need to buy that game versus just buying it straight up on blind faith and pure hype. So I think like demos is going to help a lot.
That's good. Do you think you feel like in the future you'd want to purchase those games specifically because you are now like podcasting about games and that kind of stuff? So like you feel like you'd buy them anyways for that purpose? So like you can.
I feel like there's going to be instances where I'm previewing and reviewing games and talking about them for podcast purposes where, like, yeah, I think that's going to be the case. But then, like, I think, like, there's also, some of those games that I didn't have on the docket where, like, I plan on doing, like, a game of the year talks and like, mid-year rankings and such like that, where I'm like, I probably need to go play those games to see if they... everyone's talking about those, everyone's rating those high. I probably do need to go check those out for that specific purpose, or to at least like have a valid opinion on the direction of the year as a whole. But outside of that, it's like, yeah, I probably need to be more strategic about that sort of thing.
That makes sense. With that said, what console do you feel like you've spent the most money on for like this generation?
Ooh, I like that question. Honestly, this generation, I'd probably say still the PlayStation, but I think it's closer than I probably think. PlayStation has those tentpole like premier games that I think I've actually spent a lot of. I buy when they come out, so I think I've paid the full price for it. Like the Spider-Mans of the world, the Horizons, like those type of games. I just love their style of games, so I think I've spent the most a la carte money on that. But then like on Xbox, it's more of the subscription service, so. I'd probably still say PlayStation because of that reason. PC, I haven't really bought. I just been fortunate enough to get codes for a lot of video games and reviewing them there. So I'm like, I haven't really gotten I haven't purchased a lot of PC games there. But like, yeah, it's probably PlayStation so far. I can't remember the last time I bought a game other than Tears of the Kingdom for the Switch. If I'm being honest, I can't remember the last one I actually went out and bought. And yeah,
And Just Dance for me.
yeah. You get Just Dance, but I don't even play that bad boy. So yeah, there's that.
That's fair. Well, with that said, I know you mentioned one of them earlier, but what game or games, if they were remade, would you buy right now? No questions asked.
Woo! No questions asked. I think that's a really good question. I think there's about 4 or 5 games I know I would buy if they said this is just a modern remake of this game, straight up. And I think it's like SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, a WWE game, was probably one of my favorite games growing up. I've played every single wrestling game in my lifetime, and SmackDown Here Comes the Pain is probably one of my favorites. Maybe it's because of the way I can remember myself really loving that game. Maybe it's the roster, but I absolutely adore that game. So no, if they remade that from the ground up, had a modernized roster and a retro roster that matched that same thing, they can have that same art style. Just give me quicker load times, give me more in-depth entrances, and I'd eat that shit right up. So no questions asked. SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. NBA Street is another one though. Like, love NBA Street growing up. So NBA Street Volume 2 was probably one of my favorite sports games growing up. They remade that, put a modern day roster in it. No questions asked. I'm buying that bad boy. And then outside of that, I think that I grew up playing the X-Men Legend games, which is, like, that was my shit growing up too. So I'm like, yeah, I think like those X-Men Legends 2, Ultimate Alliance, that whole little staple of Marvel games right there. I'd love to see modern adaptations of that. But outside of those, I think like that, and if I'm going with a actual like adventure style game, the first Uncharted, like the first Uncharted game, I think would be so amazing to see that one get remade and to play that on a more modern day console. I think the rest of the series plays magnificently well. I think it, I think it has aged very gracefully, but that first one and maybe the second one, I can understand that getting a remake. I would love to see it happen too. Ugh. If you're listening, everybody, and you're hearing that panting, that's Biscuit or Labradoodle, by the way. He loves being near us. So I'm like, if you're hearing panting, that's it.
Last time we tried giving him a ball, and he just ran back and forth the whole time. So this time I tried giving him a toy that he chews on, and he's doing much better this time around. But yeah, that's what you're hearing right now.
Yeah, you can hear the chew sounds, maybe.
Out of curiosity, what are some ways that you save money as a gamer?
Oh, I think Xbox Game Pass, even with the price increase, I happen to buy a lot of months ahead of time and stack those up and do deals like that. If you can find deals on Game Pass subscriptions, I think that's a remarkable deal. If you are paying month to month, still I think the $20 month to month is it's money well spent, and I think it's like a better buy than you buying straight up like $50 to $70 games every time, especially if the game's already in the Game Pass catalog. If you're an Ubisoft person, I'd recommend the Ubisoft Plus subscription. Going and looking at that. That's another, I think, $20 a month. But for what you get out of that, which is the whole entire Ubisoft catalog, the day and date of when the games come out, I think that's a really solid deal for if you're an Ubisoft gamer. Outside of that, I do think like if you are in the market and thinking about what console you want to buy, I'd recommend like investing in a PC or investing in a Steam Deck, because those games get to be stupidly cheap. PC games go cheaper faster than any games I've ever seen in my life. And if I had known that, I would have become a PC gamer a lot sooner. But like games that have come out like 6 months ago, you can find at 80% discounts sometimes, or 60% discounts, like 2 or 3 months after releasing, at depending on what game it is. So I think like if you can, I think like if you are a console gamer like I am traditionally, like I think the Steam Deck is a good gateway to like do PC gaming, but still have that handheld console like experience that we all know and love. But if you're just looking to buy, if you can just buy a PC at that point and really just sit there and get all the cheap gaming goodness for a really really stupid price. So I would say, those are the best methods to save a buck and really enjoy premium gaming in 2024.
Yeah. You said that the like PC and like Steam Deck are probably the cheapest games that you can find. If you could get one or the other, like for your listeners that would only buy one or the other, which
Like
one
if
do
you
you
can only
prefer?
buy a PC or a Steam Deck, I would definitely say if you're a console gamer growing up and you like that the button placements and all that kind of stuff, and you're also like oddly enough wanting to actually be a budget gamer still, I would definitely recommend the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck does have its limitations, of course. It's not going to run every game on super high, but for what it can do and what it can output, you can still play games on a TV just like you can with a Nintendo Switch, and you can also like play games handheld on the go. And I think like whether or not you want to do the docked or actually in a handheld mode, I think it's a good experience all the way around. And then like that Steam library is massive. There's so many games that are in Steam, and you just add on to the fact that you can connect your Xbox library. You can play your Xbox library on the Steam Deck. You can also play, you can play the Ubisoft launcher, which is that Ubisoft catalog that I was telling you about earlier. You can also play the Steam catalog, the Epic Games catalog, which is like an alternative to like Steam as well. I'm like, it's so much of a variety of what you can play on that thing. It's insane. So I'm like, even if you were an Xbox gamer beforehand and you were like, this next go around, I still have an Xbox One, and this next go around I wanted to play on PC. I would say still, unless you want to get a high-end PC, I just recommend the Steam Deck at that point, or any one of the handheld PC markets like the ROG Ally. I think the Steam Deck is a better buy, in my opinion, than the ROG Ally. But yeah, I definitely recommend that. But if you want to get the most premium game experience possible, definitely go with just either build your own PC or buy a high-end PC, because then you can get that premium 4K resolution, run all your games in ultra high, and call it a day after that point.
Before we head out, I think I want to ask a little personal question, not super
Yeah, sure.
personal, but like when you ever the kind of person who would go out and wait for games at midnight, like outside of the like GameStop and all that kind of experience?
Oh, I thought you were gonna ask me a real real personal question, but
No.
I think that's an easy question to answer. I only did that a couple of times in my life. I think I did that for GTA 5 back in 2013. I think I did wait at games. I think I went and drove up and like pre-ordered that game, came back to GameStop and picked that thing up at midnight and played the shit out of it that night. And then later on that day, I think it's like later on that next day, I think I consumed GTA 5, and that was a midnight release for me. I think I want to say it wasn't necessarily a midnight release, I don't think, but like Halo 3, I went and picked up super. I think like I did go to I picked it up the day it came out, and there was a huge line and everything for it. And I remember I had a queue. I think like at that time, I think it was Best Buy. They gave me like a queue card of where I was in line, and I do remember like being in line for that experience. So a couple of times here and there, but now that I'm this grizzled ass old man at 33 years old, I don't really go to midnight premieres of anything anymore. But back in the day, yeah, I went to a couple.
Any bad experiences during those like wait times? Or just sitting
know,
forever.
nah, it was a couple of people. Like I remember the GTA one specifically of like people who of like hearing stories about like the first things people were going to do about like when they got this game, whether or not they were going to like immediately, go on a killing rampage or if they were actually going to like dive into the story hardcore. I remember a dude in front of me in line at GameStop, and he got absolutely hoed. Like, oh my goodness, it was tragic to see. I remember him trading in like a game console and like maybe he had a box load of games. I'm talking about a box load. In this day and age, like with the retro boom that's going on right now, he would have probably made bank off of all these games. But he had a box load of retro games. He traded in this old ass system and a whole bunch of these games, and he was talking so much shit beforehand. He was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna trade this in. I might get a new console tonight and get a new and get that GTA 5." He's like, "I might get both of them." And I shit you not, the look on his face when that man told him he'd get like $34. It was like $34 and some change, and he was legitimately. I thought at that time he was gonna snatch that man across the counter and whoop his ass. I thought at that time I was about to witness an ass whooping. But he was so crestfallen, and they were like, "Yeah, you can put it towards GTA 5, and that's the game would only cost you like maybe 20 or so bucks at this point." And the man legitimately was talking shit for about half an hour into that point, and he was just heartbroken. And I felt for him, I really did. I felt for him because I was like, man, he got hoed. He absolutely got hoed. They did this man absolutely dirty, but then like. It was funny. I ain't gonna lie. It was funny because he gaslit all of us up. He talked some hardcore shit beforehand. So like that moment was funny, but like it's heartbreaking, but it's funny at the same time. But yeah, that was like really one of the biggest moments I remember, or like one of the core memories I have from midnight launches. Other than that, it was just coming home and actually like playing those games before those were kind of like the last string of games before like you would pop in a disc and then make you upload. It'd make you give like a day one update. So I'm like, you actually would get to like go home and actually like stay up and play a game back then. Like now you come on, you go out and buy a game for a midnight release, you gotta come home and download the whole game. It ain't no point in it, unless you're a physical collector, which mad props to you, but like nah, you just gotta come home and download the game and the patch anyways. So if you got slow ass internet, you might well call it a day. You're gonna play that thing in the morning anyway. You might well go.
It's kind of surprising to me to know that you would stand in line because you're notorious for not being the most patient person. But
back then, yeah,
that
back
FOMO.
then, yeah, it was a thing of like FOMO, and then like I used to love growing up. I loved these high profile events, or what I consider these pop culture events. Like I used to love those midnight premiere showings of movies, or like to this day, I still remember like going to see Harry Potter in the Deathly Hallows or Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince at midnight. I remember those. I remember that. I remember seeing The Dark Knight and even Avengers around like at that midnight showing. I'm like, I loved being a part of those big moments in pop cultural history, but like. Yeah, nowadays that shit for the birds. I'm ready to go bed. I'm ready to eat and go bed. But nah, I'm like I'll play that bad boy tomorrow. We live in like a day and age as a gamer to where I'm like where games will come out on Wednesday or Tuesdays and Fridays now, and like you can pre-download the games now too. I'm like, Dan spoiled us. There's no way in hell I'll wait in line for a game now. No way in hell. Nah.
Well, RIP to that man's dreams, but that's all I have for us today. And welcome to the new age of your.
Well, thank y'all so much for listening. By the way, like I'm doing a first couple of episodes in the hot seats, and so to speak, when Giselle is being gracious enough to help me and be, I guess you could say, the moderator and the host, so to speak, for these first couple of episodes that I'm putting out. But yeah, I really want to let y'all get to know me. Hey, it's your boy Sebastian. Do your boy a favor and hit that like button. Also, to stay tuned with everything we got going on, including upcoming videos and episodes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there. Anyways, thank y'all so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay gaming, and enjoy that single player experience. Bye, everybody.